Good morning to all honourable members. Good morning to all officials present this morning. This is Wednesday, the 23rd of August 2023, and this is the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. We are about to start our meeting. It does says 9:01 on my side at the moment. Mr. Wasim Matthews, can I just get an indication from your side? Do we have a quorum?
Good morning, Chairperson. Just 1 second. Just want to check the list of members.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, Mr. Sasman, I see your hand.
We are quoted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews.
Good morning, Chairperson, and thank you. Good morning, everyone. Chairperson, I think that there may be another link that the staff are linked onto, so they may not be in this meeting. So can you please give us just a minute or two just to invite those staff members, please?
Thank you very much.
I apologize for the inconvenience.
Thank you, Mr. Sasman. If you can please sort that out for us.
Thank you.
Mr. Matthews, thank you for the confirmation that we do have a quorum. Also, a special word of welcome to the Speaker as well as the Deputy Speaker this morning. Colleagues, I will just ask Mr. Matthews just to flag the amended notice for this morning's meeting. We were intended to have an in-person meeting, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we unfortunately had to move the meeting online. So thank you very much for your indulgence in that regard as well. Honourable members, our agenda for this morning, we dealt with the welcoming. Are there any apologies? Ms. Kluter, good morning.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, all through you. Member Licker and Member Syed contacted me and rendered an apology for not being able to attend the meeting this morning.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kluter. We note their apologies and it is duly recorded. Thank you so much. Honourable members, according to the agenda this morning, we will have a briefing by the Parliamentary Monitoring Group on the accessibility of extracting information from its website, including sharing ideas on how the WCPP can adopt a similar approach for its website. And we have with us this morning Mr. Rashad Ali, the Executive Director, that will lead the PMG discussion on accessibility, on extracting information on the website. And members will then immediately after the presentation have an opportunity to pose necessary questions. Immediately after that, we will then deal with a briefing by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on the implementation and the management of the enabling allowances against the FAMPLA. Members will then also have the opportunity to pose questions, after which both PMG and WCPP may be excused from the meeting, and members will have the opportunity to make recommendations and resolutions with regards to this meeting. I also just want to mention that at the next meeting, we will deal with the minutes of the 21st of June 2023. Honourable members, are there any questions or inputs at this time? I don't see any hands. May I ask Honourable Speaker or Honourable Deputy Speaker, would you like to make some opening remarks, or will you wait for the session of WCPP?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members and colleagues from WCPP and PMG. Chair, I think from my side, if we can, I'll make some opening remarks when we get to item number 3 on the agenda, if that's in order. Thank you.
In order. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Mr. Ali, a warm welcome to you this morning, and you may proceed, sir. Thank you very much. Just if you can pause for a moment. Mr. Jawuddin, I saw your hand and it went down again. I assume...
Apologies, Chair, that was an error.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. Mr. Ali, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible. My name is Rashad. I'm the director at the Parliamentary Monitoring Group. Thank you once again for this opportunity and the invitation. Just by way of background, PMG monitors the activities of National Parliament in the main and provincial legislatures to some extent, with a particular focus on parliamentary committees. The PMG was a project of IDASA and emerged out of a partnership between Black Sash, the Human Rights Committee, and IDASA in 1995 to monitor the proceedings of the parliamentary committees on behalf of advocacy organizations. It was felt that interest groups needed to be able to follow the workings of parliamentary committees, and an accessible internet site was one of the most effective ways of achieving this. PMG became an independent NGO in 2009. As you all know, committees are important venues for parliamentary activities. They are the site where most of Parliament's business is organized. They are fundamental arenas for state of government insights, decision-making, and power. Because of our work and the work that we do, there's consistent watch over these committees. They document what is promised and planned, what is actually achieved, and the reasons, if unachieved, how this is overseen, and how ministers are or not held accountable. Our work empowers civil society and citizens at large to intervene, defend, and get involved. In 2014, we established the People's Assembly website. It's an important step in building a culture of involvement that encourages accountability as a norm. The PA website, the objectives are to bridge the gap between ordinary people and the elected representatives, to promote accountability of South African elected representatives. The PA website reaches a milestone this year as we celebrate 25 years of the website. Both websites are the face of the organization and are the vehicles through which we help to play our small part in strengthening democracy through information. Our current funders include Millennium Trust, Open Society Foundation, the Claude Leon Foundation, and the Legal Empowerment Fund. The next slide. Slide 3 is just an overview of the front of the website, and I will talk through some of the main features of the website. So the main product that PMG does is the committee meeting reports or minutes, as well as the accompanying information that we provide. The website, as we indicated, was launched in 1998.
My apologies, Mr. Ali. Honorable members and officials, may I please ask that you do mute yourselves? Thank you very much. Mr. Ali, please continue.
No problem. The main reason why people are probably attracted to the website is the information around committee meetings. And so we try and provide a comprehensive record of a committee meeting. So not only a detailed summary of what is said, we also try to include a video or audio recording, any accompanying meeting documents, an attendance record, and all of this information is then made available and it's made searchable and cataloged and curated on the website. Another important feature is our bill tracker feature, where you're able to see chronologically the process and the various stages that a bill undergoes from the time it's introduced in the legislature throughout the entire process, once it's passed by Parliament, and also once it gets signed into law and when it comes into effect as well. Call for public comments when the public is invited to make written submissions or when public hearings are organized. We promote that information on our website as well. Things like the programs are also critical for people who are interested in knowing what's happening. So both committee programs as well as plenary programs. Written replies to questions. Obviously that's an important tool for lawmakers to keep the executive in check. And so there's useful responses extracted often in those responses. So we make that information available as well. In addition to that, there's a whole bunch of information like Hansard, legacy reports, table committee reports, civic education material. We make all of that available on our website. A key feature of what we've been trying to do in the last 4 or 5 years is our work around research. We try to be as constructive as possible in trying to conduct research that will strengthen the institution. So some of the big research items that we've done, topics we've done over the years includes our review of Parliament's processing of the State Capture Commission report, a review on constituency work in South Africa, climate change and Parliament, assessing the effectiveness of written questions and replies as an oversight mechanism, testing the limits of openness, transparency, and access to information, public access to information that Parliament requests from departments, our ministers attending parliamentary committee meetings, and a review of that. The next slide, slide 6. The website is used by a wide variety of people. This includes lawmakers, their staff, political parties, academia, civil society, law firms, commercial companies, foreign embassies, and the public at large. We believe it's a very useful repository if you are interested in parliamentary information and the legislature. And we believe we've stood the test of time because of reliability, credibility, the accuracy of our work, responsiveness, neutrality, and timeliness of the work. The website is used for a variety of reasons. Our stakeholders would like to be informed on policy and legislative developments, for lobbying and advocacy reasons. Some of them want to track commitments that are made. And then obviously political parties and the executive sometimes want to track attendance and performance and what is said in respect of their portfolio. We've recorded many successes over the years, including assisting the Zondo Commission and having our work cited and relied on by civil society organization in court matters. In addition, we've managed to train over 1,000 monitors, many of them students, to write reports, giving them first-hand insight into the workings of Parliament and government. And many of them end up working in the various legislatures or in the private or public sector. The website continues to have remarkable growth, and currently we average over 350,000 unique users or unique visitors per month. One of our objectives in terms of our website, slide 7, is to be the go-to website for parliamentary information. We're committed to making our website accessible so that it can be used by as many people as possible. And so we always strive and aim to improve the user experience for everyone by increasing accessibility and usability. From time to time, we would do user testing and other usability methods to ensure that the design and the use of the websites are understandable by the intended audience and wherever major changes are made. We are also always mindful that users should be able to navigate the content easily and that it's appropriately cataloged and curated. We also have a very nifty search function, so that's an important aspect of the website. In addition to that, users are able to sign up for alerts to be notified about content that will be of interest to them. We ensure that we make documents and audios downloadable. The speed of the website is important, and so that's another factor that we are conscious of. We also have a feedback utility that allows users to send comments and ask questions about any section of the website. There are parts of the website that perhaps are not fully accessible. For example, we do have a subscription service where you do need to subscribe to certain sections of the website, but we do make it free for NGOs and ordinary citizens. There are issues maybe around pagination with certain sections we could do a lot better. And maybe missing or unclear page descriptions, missing labels, or non-accessible PDFs. And so the point is, this is ongoing work in terms of continuing to enhance and make changes and improvements to the website. The current iteration of the website, it took us a long time to reach this point. We went through various stages, obviously, during the lifespan of the organization. Parliamentary websites are the most important, or one of the most important windows for citizens to view the work of their legislatures. They offer parliaments the means to communicate actively with citizens and to enhance public understanding of the legislature's role and responsibilities. Official parliamentary websites, however, are not the only source for citizens and members to obtain information about the legislature's work. Websites dealing with public policy and with legislative and oversight issues are maintained by civil society, by lobbying groups, by political parties, and commercial companies. Because there are different sources that can provide this information, it's important that the official site of the legislature is authoritative and non-partisan, and that it provides timely, accurate, and comprehensive information. The website must be easy to understand and use and be freely accessible to all. It must also be well managed and supported so that it can respond to the growing needs of both citizens and members, keep pace with advances in technology, and support the objectives of transparency, accessibility, accountability, and effectiveness of the parliamentary institution. The level of internet use and the resources available for maintaining and developing parliamentary websites may vary greatly. And so obviously with limited funding, it's important to, where possible, if you're able to collaborate within the sector, legislative sector, or with civil society or other groupings, that's something to bear in mind. Obviously the issue of language, where there are multiple languages in a province or an area, it's important to be mindful about how do we go about accommodating this and taking this into account given available resources. And so where possible, every feasible effort should be made to try and make at least certain sections of the website translated into other languages. And as technology and its uses in Parliament continues to evolve at a rapid pace, the creation and support of websites must remain a dynamic process. And so, as I've just mentioned, for this reason, the entire legislative sector must work together, and broader collaboration with civil society is key. The core of the work of Parliament is its legislative oversight and budget responsibilities. So the development of the website and the design of the website should try and be mindful of these elements. There's a whole lot, there's a bunch of information that Parliament churns out and that's available. And so what we try to do in terms of our website is to at least define what are the key aspects that people actually have to know, and to try and make that prominent and as visible as possible, and to focus on that. And then the balance and the rest of the information, we also provide that, but where we situate that, we don't make that as prominent. So things like analytics, feedback from stakeholders, talking to the web developers, seeing what other similar websites, all of that will inform developments and changes that will be made. It's also important to be mindful of tools to enable members, committees, and officials to efficiently receive, manage, and respond to emails from citizens and civil society. It goes without saying that in order to achieve the objective of having a truly effective, functional, and accessible website, The website has to have the approval and support of the highest parliamentary and administrative authorities. The website has there's adequate long-term funding and trained staff. There's adequate and secure technical infrastructure to do the sort of work. There is a strategic vision and planning in relation to this. So everyone understands what the goal and the needs are. These are properly defined. The needs of the audience is also defined, and there's constant and periodic evaluation is conducted to ensure that the goals are being met. So access to information is vital to citizens' participation in the democratic process. Websites are important entry points to facilitate this. Lastly, our relationship with WCPP. PMG, as indicated, started monitoring national parliament in 1995. We only started monitoring provincial parliaments in 2018 through a PIP project funded by the EU with other partners. And that project concluded in 2021. And so it was our first initial foray into provincial legislatures. We believe we have a strong relationship with WCPP over the years. There are key individuals who are our supporters and our cheerleaders. Yeah, whenever we need information, there is an exchange of information and support, and I believe it's both ways. We are always open to collaboration. We view our presence today as being part of that. And so if there are any additional opportunities where we can share information or learn or support, we are more than open to that. Just WCPP in terms of looking at its peers is obviously one of the better legislatures in terms of the website. I mean, there are some legislatures with the websites, there's constant outages, or the information is completely outdated, et cetera, et cetera. And so obviously there's lots more work that can be done, and I guess this is part of the process. But yeah, I think across the legislative sector and going forward, we look forward to being part of that process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali. Honourable members, this is now your opportunity to raise any questions. I see the Honourable Kasim. Let me just get the order correct. I see the Honourable Kasim and then the Honourable Bosman. You may proceed, Honourable Kasim.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation as well. I just wanted to check, how often do you update the parliamentary monitoring site? Is it daily, weekly, or monthly? Because I follow this parliamentary monitoring group weekly. You know, sometimes I just like to go back and check on the questions and my participation, and I noticed that there's lots of missing details that sometimes also give the impression that the member was not active in the committee or never gave input in a specific meeting. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily record all the questions that were asked in that meeting. So I just wanted to check how often do you update, and do you assign a certain group to the legislature and a certain group to national parliament, or do the same team monitor at the same time? I mean, if you can just give clarity on that, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Kasim. Honourable Bosman.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation. What I'd like to know is there scope for collaboration around public participation and the collection of public input on the work of the provincial legislature, and whether the PMG site is able to accommodate that, and how Mr. Ali sees that working, for instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. I'm partially covered by the Honourable Bosman in my question. And also just how do you see that effectiveness of the system itself when it comes to citizens and those various groups that you mentioned. I don't see any further hands on my side. Honorable Maseko.
Thank you very much. I just want to find out with the website, the intention of the website, the end users, who is your target market, the communities out there. And if you check through your statistics, who are the users so far in trying to give the content to the website? How do you choose what to put in and what not to put in at a specific time? And I'm talking towards the content being that you do also the national, the NCOP and the Western Cape legislature. Now, how do you go about to decide that what is it that I'm going to put in for this week or for this day? And what is the intention for you choosing that? So if maybe you understand what I'm trying to find out, I'll appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Maseko. Honorable members, I do not see any further hands. Let's deal with the round of questions. You are most welcome to pose new questions or follow-up questions. Mr. Ali, over to you. Thank you.
I'll try to capture the questions as best as I can. If I've not addressed anything, please let me know. So we want national parliament. That's our main focus. And then Western Cape Provincial Parliament, we try and emulate that to a certain extent. Initially, when we started Western Cape Provincial Parliament, we started with 6 committees. And then that developed to, I think we are now monitoring 11 committees of the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. To some extent, we have separate teams that monitor, a dedicated team that monitors Western Cape Provincial Parliament. And the process is very much the same in terms of what we do at National Parliament. We do our best. Our reports are meant to be a fairly detailed summary of what happens. So it's not meant to be a verbatim. However, it's meant to be substantially detailed. And so that's why we also make audios and videos available. In addition, if there are any issues or gaps with reports, we are always open to making corrections and fixing the reports where appropriate. And so if there are any issues that you come across, please bring that to our attention. We will review and then make necessary corrections where we can. We are a small team of 7 core staff members, and then we have plus minus 70 to 80 part-time monitors who are students that we draw from the universities in the Western Cape primarily, who are our foot soldiers and our monitors who actually monitor these meetings on our behalf. The website information is updated. The website is updated on an ongoing basis, a daily basis. There are as indicated before, there are different strands of information. There's Hansard, there's table committee reports, there's bills, there's meeting reports, there's programs. So there's a variety of information that's being updated on an ongoing basis. And so we're talking about, 454 NA members. We're talking about Western Cape cohort, and then we also have information from other legislatures. So it is possible that there might be gaps from time to time. Where there are, as indicated, please alert us and we will do our best to address those. In terms of collaboration, I think it's one of the main reasons why we're here and why PMG exists. We're not meant to be in competition. We want to strengthen this democracy, and we are more than open. And so one of the ways that's been happening in small ways, but maybe it can be elevated, is we have been contacted by some committees to say, can you publicize on your website this public participation opportunity? And we've always agreed to do so. So if this could be maybe a more standardized thing where it happens a lot more regularly, then we definitely would be open to that as well. What we try to do is at national, we have a campaign, and maybe we could also do it at provincial level, is often, there's a formal invitation for the public to participate when they're invited. But obviously members of the public, have the right to communicate with committees at any point. They don't have to wait for a formal invitation. And not only on legislation, on oversight matters. And we feel that that's something that's lacking. And so if a committee is dealing with an annual report, what are the issues that they should be tackling? And that's a way maybe the public could get involved. And so there are creative ways of thinking around public involvement in terms of not just the legislative work of the legislature, but also in its oversight work and other areas. Yeah, the wide variety of users, as I mentioned before, the media, the broader public, civil society. I think one of our main stakeholders is obviously civil society, because they are important conduits. We rely on them to then utilize the information they extract from our website to then feed that to their constituencies. Because we're not experts on housing issues or on social grants issues. We are information generators. We then pass on that information to the experts, who then utilize that information in the best way possible, either for advocacy or to transfer that information or to participate in legislative reforms, etc. I hope I've answered the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. Colleagues, I'm opening up for a second round of questions or any follow-up questions that you might have. I do not see any hands on my side. Mr. Ali, are there anything that you would want to convey in your closing remarks to the committee?
Thank you very much once again for the opportunity. We are more than welcome to continue this discussion offline with whoever and to play our part in strengthening this democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali, for your presentation this morning. It is much welcomed and providing us with a better understanding as to exactly what your role and that of PMG entails. You are most welcome to stay on for the remainder of the meeting. If not, we will then excuse you at this point in time. Thank you very much. Honourable members, we then move on to point number 3 on the agenda, which is the briefing by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament on the implementation and management of the enabling allowances against the FAMPLA. At this point, Honourable Speaker, I will provide you with an opportunity. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Honourable Chief Whip, Honourable Chairperson, my apologies, Honourable members and colleagues from the WCPP. Honourable Chair, I just want to, I'm not going to have a long introduction, just wanting to say firstly, thank you very much for putting this very important matter onto the agenda of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee. I think it's important that we just outline today the importance of the legal requirements that the institution has and the legal obligation we have when it comes to enabling allowances, but overall towards public funding, and how those two, with ethical behavior of members and the systems that we're trying to put in place, how that comes together. So with that being said, we will be happy to engage and answer questions on this. But thank you once again for the opportunity to have this on the agenda. I think it's long overdue, and I trust we can have a robust, open discussion on this. Thank you.
Appreciate. Thank you so much also for your availability and engaging the committee on this. Can I please ask, is the Whoop, I see, is it the Secretary sharing that will be presenting to us?
Morning, Chairperson.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Perhaps if I can just pause you for a brief moment.
Yes,
I just need to ensure that I do not miss out. Deputy Speaker, is there anything from your side?
Good morning, everybody. No, there isn't. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Good morning, and you may proceed. Thank you very much.
Morning, Chairperson, morning, Speaker, Deputy Speaker, colleagues, and honourable members. Mr. Titus will be taking us through the presentation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Titus. Good morning. And thank you for presenting to the committee this morning.
Good morning, honourable members. Good morning, Chair, colleagues. Am I audible at the moment, Chairperson?
Loud and clear. Thank you very much, Mr. Titus.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me start at the beginning of this particular slideshow. Chair, you will remember that the last time that we had spoken, we tried to do the presentation, but it was a different time and a different space, and the audio wasn't good. So we're trying a second bite at the cherry this morning. So the question from the POC was to establish whether the enabling allowances that are being implemented by the Western Cape Provincial Parliament's administration and the organization as a whole, whether these are rooted in FAMPLA, as well as what are the procedures that we follow as far as the administrative implementation is concerned. So I'm going to take only the high-level view around some of these aspects, trying to make the linkages between how we are currently implementing and where that is finding resonance in the actual Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, FAMPLA, as amended in 2015. So broadly, the issue around enabling allowances is not necessarily overtly reflected in the Act, but the Schedule 2, which refers to the Code of Ethics for the Executive, provides very good guidelines around the implementation and also the ethical conduct, as the speaker had indicated a little bit earlier, for members of Parliament, but also for the spirit in which the Act has been written. So if we just take a little bit of a closer look at FAMPLA, and I think the importance is here that there is a spirit of the Act, which was also spoken about a little earlier about the when the monitoring group director was speaking around some of the values around the accountability, the transparency, the accessibility, and so on of information pertaining to public funds and public interest. And so two parts become important. The one is that that we enact as a parliament the spirit of the Act. That's the first part, and that we underscore that by implementing the various principles that the Act tries to espouse. And then the second part is the implementation of measures for good governance, which is being audited on an annual basis, and which must be able to withstand accounting principles in the organization. So the preamble of FAMPLA intent speaks to two parts. One looks at setting high standards of financial ethics, and this is not only for members of Parliament. I mean, this is for all staff, so everybody who's working in the interest of the public. The second part deals with efficient economic and the effective use of resources, and then it speaks to the aspects around transparency, accountability, sound management of revenue, expenditure, assets, liabilities, and so on. Chapter 2 of FAMPLA speaks to oversight, the executive authority and the administration of the Act. And there are two particular parts that speaks to obligations. The one refers to obligations of the executive authority in the Speaker of Parliament, and the part 3 speaks to the obligations of the accounting officer in the Secretary to the Provincial Parliament. The EA is accountable to Parliament, as we know, for sound financial management.
And members of the executive must obviously then also act in accordance with the code of ethics that is identified in Schedule 2 of the Act. So Chapter 2, in just quoting specifically what it says, 5, 1, 2, and 3, the executive authority of Parliament is the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, acting jointly. And then there's a caveat that says that this is to be applicable to provincial parliaments in the provincial context. The EA is accountable to Parliament, which I just mentioned a little bit earlier around financial management, and members of the EA must, of the executive authority, must act in accordance with the Code of Ethics, which is identified in Schedule 2, which is also the part that I've raised a little bit earlier. So the accounting officer has very specific obligations within FAMPLA. Section 7 speaks to that in particular. Here we're talking about the accounting officer who must ensure that the resources of Parliament are used effectively, economically, transparently, efficiently. That there is full and proper records of all the financial affairs of Parliament, that that there's a system that maintains the effective and efficient processes and systems for financial management, risk management, control, and audits. That Parliament must comply with the obligations and the of relating to tax, levies, duties, pensions, etc., which is all identified in the Members' Facilities Guide as well. But we need to ensure, as the accounting officer, that there are particular implementations around that. Unauthorized, irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure and losses must be prevented at all times, and the accounting officer must ensure this, and steps must be taken where such expenditure has occurred. So for staff, there's disciplinary action that needs to be instituted who commits an act of financial misconduct. And we know that in the instance of members, there is a particular process through the rules that has been identified in Parliament around how processes such as that will be implemented and will be assessed from a member's perspective. So where it is appropriate, also the accounting officer will then identify where it's appropriate, whether criminal proceedings must be initiated against any person who has committed an offence. I think what is important, Chair and members, is that Section 69 of the Act actually holds the accounting officer responsible in his or her person if reasonable steps had not been taken to prevent fruitless and wasteful expenditure and to combat corrupt activity. So so we can speak about that a little later. Chapter 5 speaks to, and here I just need to be
Mr. Titus?
Yes, ma'am.
I do sincerely apologize for interrupting you. I just note that Ms. Genevieve Okom has got her hand up. Can I just give an opportunity before we proceed? Ma'am?
Apologies, it's a error hand.
Okay, thank you very much. Please proceed, Mr. Titus.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The Chapter 5, I just wanted to give a little bit of a caveat because I've indicated there also that Chapter 5 has to be read in conjunction with Section 3 of the Act as well. So this deals with support for members and political parties, and I want to make a distinction between the obligations of National Parliament for assisting with the implementation of regulations pertaining to this kind of support. There is an obligation on National Parliament to be writing these regulations. As we speak, the only regulations that have been implemented and then that has been submitted to all legislatures across and provincial parliament has been the supply chain regulations. The others are still not concluded. So this is important in the sense that the spirit of this act still requires that there must be support for members and political parties, with the absence of the higher order regulations. The Western Cape Provincial Parliament has obviously taken that into account and implemented that through our policies. And the main policy for pertaining to how we operate is the Members Facilities Guide. So there has Chapter 5 speaks to support for members and political parties. Later on, I will speak about the nature of the support, but the EA must make regulations concerning the allocation and the use of funds to political parties or to members of parliament after consultation with political parties. Regulations must authorize the accounting officer to withhold funds to a party or to an MPP. The stipulations will be provided a little later. So if we talk of, and here is a quote again, because this refers to section 34.3 that looks at support for members and political parties. The regulations that I was just referring to, which we have now incorporated in the Members Facilities Guide, must regulate the allocation of funds in an equitable manner. And when we speak of an equitable manner, if I'm just speaking of the secretarial allowance, and I'm speaking, Chair, of the constituency allowances, all allowances in the implemented in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament takes the equitable manner part into consideration. So we identify the number of seats that each of the parties have, and equitably the financial contributions to those parties are considered along those lines. The other part of it would also look at trying to be fair with regard to the allocation of members to a constituency, identifying the various areas where members will be serving their communities in their constituencies, so that there isn't a one-size-fits-all for all members. So the allocation of funds is provided in that particular way. And then I think the other part is where there's got to be specific identification of the purpose for which the funds may be used. So if the funds is supposed to be used for a particular reason and the reason does not exist anymore, or the outcome of that identified ring-fence funds must be used for something else, there must also be due process of how we identify how the reallocation of the funds will be taking place. Financial management, section 49, C, D, and E, the administration, or we must, as a WCPP, provide for prompt payment of funds into a bank account. There's a process that we follow with registering a bank account for parties and registering bank accounts for individual members of parliament and for staff. We must stipulate the responsibilities of members of parliament and parties to account for the allocated funds. I think parties are acutely aware of how those processes work, especially as it applies to the enabling allowances, but also as it applies to party funding here through the secretarial and constituency allowances, and the responsibilities of the parties to account for the allocated funds at a particular over a particular period and regularly across the financial year. So there must also be a procedure that we must establish according to which members of parliament and parties account for the use of funds. That is what I've spoken about a little earlier. In terms of further, there is a prescribed format for financial statements for the use of the funds. The parties must submit financial statements in the prescribed format to the accounting officer. There must be a procedure also for providing for the recovery of funds spent irregularly. So if we have a situation where there's irregular expenditure or fruitless and wasteful expenditure, etc., then there must be a process and a procedure for how these funds must be recovered. And then, of course, there is always in a democratic dispensation, there must be process for dispute resolution and the procedures for that. 49.4 speaks to the again, still around the regulations, which must authorize the accounting officer to withhold funds that are allocated to a party until the accounting officer receives, firstly, adequate information regarding the ability of the party or the member from a party to manage and account for funds. Two, any outstanding audit reports and or on the use of parliamentary funds by the party or by the member, and any other information that is necessary to confirm that there was appropriateness in the expenditure and that the member or the party was actually entitled to the funds. Five, that each party represented, and here I've just put WCPP in there because it speaks to the National Assembly, but it was also applicable to the Western Cape Provincial Parliament, must be provided with financial and admin assistance in proportion to its representation to enable it and its leader to perform their functions in Parliament effectively. So this happens in twofold. One, through the secretarial allowance to the various political parties to ensure that there's particular infrastructure and that parties are able to make staff appointments, but also through the administration, who has a dedicated team who's supposed to provide different kind of support in the Members Affairs unit. When it comes to transfers, which speaks to section 35 of FAMPLA, yeah, I'm going to just speak to 1A and B. Before transferring any funds from Parliament to any other entity, the accounting officer must obtain a written insurance from that entity that there has been the effective and efficient and transparent financial management of the funds, and that there are importantly internal control systems, and that the transfer is subject to conditions and remedial measures, which is also part of what I've raised before earlier on. Budget implementation, the accounting officer is responsible for implementing the budget and must ensure spending is according with the approved budget. So if a budget has been approved and there is an amendment to the budget, whether this is even an allowance to members or allowance to a party, any kind of amendments to that, there's got to be a particular procedures pertaining to that as per the financial rules of the WCPP and broadly within the context of accounting principles. All revenue and expenditure must be properly monitored and executive directives with financial implications must happen in writing, must be addressed to the accounting officer, and if there is a directive that has been contemplated in terms of subsection 1, if there is such a directive and that directive results in either unauthorized or fruitless expenditure, etc., then the accounting officer is obligated through section 52A that this may not happen. It may not, the accounting officer may not proceed with the implementation of such a directive, and the accounting officer must inform the executive authority in writing of the likelihood and the risk that this unauthorized expenditure will lead to. And if the accounting officer proceeds to implement a directive that can actually result in risk to the organization, and that refers in particular to subsection 2, without receiving a further instruction from the executive authority in terms of subsection 5, and it results in unauthorized expenditure, the accounting officer is in his person or her person directly responsible for such unauthorized expenditure, etc. So I wanted to members and Chair just focus a little bit on the Code of Ethics. Now, the Code of Ethics is exactly what it is. It's a code of conduct. Now, the Western Cape Provincial Parliament has already identified rules pertaining to its own Code of Ethics and our own Code of Conduct, both for members of Parliament as well as for staff of the WCPP. So, the Code of Ethics for members of the Executive Authority, while this is not a law, This is a very good guideline for ethical conduct across the various provinces and across national parliament as well. So the object of the code is obviously to enhance public confidence, and to support and assist and enhance members in the integrity of the management of Parliament. So it applies to members of the executive authority of Parliament and supplements the Parliamentary Code of Conduct for the Assembly. In this case, it would probably obviously be the Western Cape Provincial Parliament as well. So in addition to the Code of Conduct, the Code of Ethics stands in support to the overall code of conduct of members and members of Parliament. And I think the idea here is to inspire public confidence in the work that is being done, in the transparency with regard to how we want to effect the public purse or the responsible manner in which we want to expend expenditure when it comes to funds that are public funding. So this code of ethics recognizes that in holding high public office, members of the executive committee, we have an obligation to perform their official functions and duties in a way that will bear the closest public scrutiny. And here is where it is not only about the letter of the law and that which is legal. It is about the obligations around how we inspire and provide overall assurances around the expenditure of public funds. Not only whether these matters are done within a legal manner, but also whether this is done in a manner that is responsible and appropriate. So and I think one of the second part of it speaks to the members of the executive authority who must conform to the principles of good governance that are set out in the schedule, and fulfill different obligations, fulfill their obligations as espoused by the Constitution, the law and the rules, etc. But also to look at Schedule 187B, where they perform their duties and exercise their powers with honesty, diligence, and accordance with the highest ethical standards. And all of what this speaks to is about the consistent integrity of the office and the oath of office. So with this, this code of ethics also speak to how members of the executive authority needs to be arranging their private affairs in a manner that will not prevent real potential or apparent conflicts of interest. And we've got particular rules around that already. And if such conflict arises, that there is a way in which to resolve the conflict in favor of the interests of Parliament and the interest of the public overall. It stands to reason that members of the executive authority may not use their positions to enrich themselves or to improperly benefit any other person, or that members of the executive authority will not expose themselves to situations that creates a conflict of interest or risk, or a risk to their official responsibilities and their private interest, or that members of the executive authority receive remuneration or any other work or service other than for the work that they've been appointed as members of Parliament, and the use of allowances that is provided for by Parliament for the purpose that it was intended or for which it was provided. And if there is no longer such a purpose, I think I spoke about that earlier on, that there must be procedures and processes around how we reallocate if there's a need for reallocation. Chairperson, also allow me to at this point also indicate that while members of Parliament, and currently we are using a reimbursive process when it comes to allowances for members of Parliament, there is a reimbursive process. But I think what does become important is that there is underlying all of this the principle that members should not be out of pocket for doing the work for which they had been elected, on the one hand, and secondly, point number C, or point number A also, in 4A up, that I've got on the screen, that members would not be enriched or unduly benefit from allowances that as a result of their role as members of parliament. You cannot be impoverished or should not be impoverished as a result of the fact that you are a member of parliament. So I think number 5, complaints concerning to the adherence to this code must be determined by the parliamentary committee established under the rules of parliament to oversee code of conduct for the assembly and permanent council members, and in our case it will be the Western Cape Provincial Parliament and Parliament itself. The scope of our members' facilities guide, I think members are aware of this already. I think the principles as per FAMPLA for the enabling allowance, I think one of the things that had come up very strongly through just the review of what FAMPLA speaks to is the issue of fairness. It speaks about an equitability that is supposed to be applied, accountability, rules and procedures to prevent misuse or abuse, and then of course, as you know, while the ethical Schedule 2, the Code of Ethics, is not formally adopted, I think it's a very good guideline around how we should be raising the bar across the organization, not only for members of parliament, but across the organization when it comes to the issues around accountability and what it is that we want to speak to public when we speak of public interest. Then stipulations in the members' facilities guidance, the rules. I spoke about it a little earlier. The enabling allowance is based on a basic principle of 4 different distance categories for precinct to the constituency area. And constituency area and the primary residence, and then of course there's a code of conduct for MPPs and the code of conduct for staff members as well. Relocation, FAMPLA speaks to again about fairness, accountability, rules and procedures to prevent misuse, and then based on the 4 categories from the primary residence. In terms of the constituency allowance, same principles, and then there's the added aspects around sound financial practices, rules and procedures to prevent misuse. In our case, we are speaking to annual audited financial statements, quarterly activity and expenditure reporting, which all of the parties provide, both from on the expenditure incurred for secretarial allowances, as well as expenditure incurred as far as constituency allowances are concerned. So both for the constituency and the secretarial allowance. Chairperson, that is it from my side. I think the other presentation, there was another detailed information. I think that is just for members' own information. I'm not going to be speaking to that. I think that is all from my side, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Titus, for a very comprehensive and extensive presentation to the committee this morning. And I'm sure members are ready with an array of questions based on the presentation. Members, you can now indicate your questions, your comments. I don't want to assume that there's a delay in connection, that members are unable to raise their hands, because I don't see any hands on my side. It doesn't seem that there are any questions for you, Mr. Titus.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation to the committee this morning. Honourable members, in the light that there are no further questions to the presentation. Honourable Speaker, are there any closing remarks from your side or the Deputy Speaker?
Chairperson.
Honourable Lekker, good morning. I see your hand. You may proceed.
Good morning, Chair. My apologies to everyone for joining late. Chair, mine may not be in the presentation per se, but it would be around the process of claiming. As you would know, I've joined the meeting late, but maybe this question might have been asked before. So I would want to get an understanding as to going forward, seeing that the process of claims will be done by members themselves. Has there been any thinking or consideration in the fact that we may not be always in the office and it may not be practically possible for members to submit the claims on their own and that they would require the assistance of the support staff? So if that question has not been asked, and I would want to persuade the administration to consider that aspect, Chair, because it will be highly impossible for people to drive all the way, perhaps from Maritzburg to Cape Town, so that member banks can submit a claim. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lekker. We did not deal with a question posed, so I see Mr. Titus has got his hand up to respond. Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Titus.
Thank you, Chair. The member is correct, and maybe I must just provide a little bit of context to the POC. And while we've not had our briefing session to the POC pertaining to the actual cyber attack, I think I need to be also just mentioning it to the POC that the implication for how we maintain safety from a cybersecurity perspective has also shifted the failovers that we've had previously. And so within that particular context, within a remote context now, we are having to make different kind of, or find different kind of solutions for how we can remain safe and prevent the organization from further attack within the cybersecurity space. I'm not going to be speaking about the details of that Chairperson, but we will speak of some of those details when we have the briefing session. Now, that as the backdrop and the context in which I want to respond. As a result, and members are aware that we wanted to roll out the employee self-service to all members of Parliament, because functionally we are able to do this from the 1st of September. But because we do not at this stage have all of the assurances in place that we will be able to conduct all of our systems in a remote context, we are continuing with all the claims for members of Parliament as we have been up until now. We have the system available. Employee self-service is accessible. Members of Parliament have, or there had been some training sessions already. The role of support staff, we can still unpack a little bit further. I have provided some input in one of the training sessions as well to members of Parliament around what possible solutions we could have in how our support staff could still play a role. The aspects around the claimant and all of that, we have an idea of how that will work going forward, but for now the status quo will remain and members will claim as they have usually claimed with all of the supporting information that they required. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Titus. Honourable Lekker, does that deal with your question? Any follow-ups?
Just to say, Chair, perhaps when the full implementation of this new kind of system, Chair, there must be a consideration made to to assist us, particularly with the assistance of the support staff members. That's my plea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lekker. We duly note your comment in that regard, and it is also recorded for the minute purposes. Honourable members, can I also just note in terms of the cyber attack report, as indicated in one of our previous meetings, that WCPP will be back to this committee to have an in-committee session together with the procedural team. We managed to identify a date for Friday, the 1st of September. We could negotiate with one of the committee chairs, but that obviously has to be confirmed by the programming authority and subsequently shared with WCPP as well as members of this committee. So that will be confirmed in due course. Honourable members, at this point, Honourable Speaker, any closing remarks from your side?
Thank you very much. No, Chair, just from my side, thank you to the honourable members for the engagement this morning, and then, as always, thank you very much to the administration for all that you do and for trying to make sure that we get the systems right, to find the balance between what is legally required for the institution and administration to execute, but also not to add an extra layer of bureaucracy. Honourable Lekker, I take note of your Maritzburg comment. I don't know if it was strategic, but yes, I completely agree that we look at making it easier for members in the prescripts of the law, not add an additional layer of bureaucracy. Thank you very much, Chair. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Thank you so much, Honourable Deputy Speaker, all colleagues from the WCPP for your indulgence to this committee this morning. And as mentioned, we will duly formally communicate with you in terms of the in-committee session on the 1st of September with regards to the cyber attack at the WCPP, and then also further actions and resolutions transpiring within the session. Thank you so much and have a most wonderful and productive and blessed week ahead. Members of the WCPP are then now excused, and members, please stay on for us to continue with the rest of our business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sugar.
Honourable members, as indicated, we will deal with our committee minutes of the 21st of June at our next meeting. Next on the agenda, we will deal with resolutions. Any actions for us to take forward? I see the Honourable Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, can I perhaps ask that we now invite the WCPP to share with us how its website operates and how members of the public is able to engage with the WCPP website to extract information and to follow the work of committees, etc.
We've got that recorded, Honourable Bosman. Just check that you are happy with the wording on the screen as well. Any other member?
Chair.
Honourable Lekker, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to perhaps get an update, particularly to the access to the building from the underground garage. Because if I remember quite well, there was supposed to be an update with regards to that, if that is possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Lekker. also recorded. Please just check if you're happy with the wording as such. Any other member? I don't see any other hands, colleagues. Are there any input, any closing remarks, comments from your side? Don't see any hands, honourable colleagues. Then thank you so much for your participation in the Parliamentary Oversight Committee this morning. Sorry, I'm just trying to read your comment there, Honourable Lekker, before we leave.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Your apology for joining late is noted, and we also note that Honourable Syed had to leave the meeting a bit earlier for another engagement. Thank you so much for that. That will also be recorded as such. Colleagues, thank you so much for your indulgence this morning, and a great word of appreciation to all our support and procedural staff this morning as well. We've dealt with our business, colleagues. Have a most wonderful and a blessed, productive week ahead. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chairperson.